Well, good morning, and thank you for joining me today. We're going to be talking about Facebook and how your church can use Facebook to reach your community. My name is Peter Frank, and I am the Senior Marketing Manager of Church Supplies at Concordia Publishing House. I work with our Concordia Technology Solutions group quite a bit, so you may have seen some of the training materials we put out. This falls right in line with that. We'll talk about some other areas you can get some free resources at the very end of the presentation today. But I've got my contact information up there. I put a few cards in the back, although I'm running low, but feel free to reach out to me at any time with any questions. And if I can't help you, I'll certainly try to point you in the right direction of somebody who can. I always enjoy talking to people who are in the churches. It helps me stay in touch with what you guys are doing and how we can help. So I'm going to start off with a question for you. See if you can guess the answer to this. In 2004, Mark Zuckerberg had a vision for a social application that lets friends exchange files of any type with each other over the web. He believed it would spread faster than just about any other application. Does anybody know what we're talking about here? Facebook? Actually, no. It's called WireHog. WireHog was an application that Mark Zuckerberg was developing after he started Facebook. So in this book, The Facebook Effect by David Kirkpatrick, he tells that story, and it's not really widely known. I got to meet David, a few years back. He was doing a book sign in New York, and I was helping with that, and he tells the story, and it was so intriguing to me, and I haven't heard it since, but about right after Facebook was started, there was 5 guys working on it. They had already moved out to California, and 2 of them were working on Facebook, 2 of them were working on WireHog, and Mark Zuckerberg was going back and forth, but he thought that WireHog would be the thing that would be most popular. And finally, as Facebook continued to grow and grow, his investors were like, all right, Mark, you got to get back onto Facebook full time. And they eventually moved some of the WireHog stuff into Facebook, but that was really his passion for a while. And I found that fascinating because I think there's a nice parallel with us. To not let the appeal of the new and exciting experience distract you from the thing with substance. And for me, when I started using Facebook, it was back in that 2004-2005 timeframe, back when Facebook was just for colleges. It was so addicting and interesting, and I spent far too much time just looking through profiles. There's no news feed at that time, and I found that just a lot of fun. And I think it's easy to get distracted by Facebook today with all the new cool features that they're adding in live video. We're streaming this live, or attempting to stream it live right now. That's all good and exciting, but as church workers, we can't forget the substance part of it, how we can use it to help share the gospel in our communities. So that's going to be our overriding theme here, is we're going to show off some of these cool new things. But if there's not value for sharing the gospel and for reaching new audiences, don't waste your time on it. And that's the key. So Facebook is a tool for reaching your community. Facebook itself, and being on Facebook, is not reaching your community. And it's easy to fool yourself into thinking that. I know I've fallen into that, and still do today, where just going through and looking at profiles, while it's fun, is not often valuable. So the topics for today, we're going to talk about personal use of Facebook, get into pages, groups, ads, and then Messenger, and where they're headed with that. So to start off with personal use, how many of you have a Facebook profile? Just about everybody. I kind of figured that. We're going to talk about that, not from how to set up a profile, but some of the interesting things that you can do with that. So why is it important to use Facebook? And I truly believe everybody in the church should be on Facebook for at least for personal use, to get an understanding of what's going on with your members, to stay in touch with people. It's good to stay in touch with people from college and other places. It's just a great way to have that community. I know that I've stayed in touch with friends and family that I probably wouldn't have if it wasn't for Facebook. To keep your fingers on the pulse. And we're going to talk about this in a little bit more detail related to your community, but understanding what's going on. Facebook is, while not the only social media network, it's the most popular. There's billions of users. You can't get that anywhere else. And finally, to understand the culture. Now, this one is a little bit difficult because with Facebook, it's really easy to hear the messages that you are used to hearing because those are your interest in, your likes and maybe your views on things can kind of be an echo chamber of what you want to hear. But I find that intentionally going and looking at things that are not necessarily my comfort zone, it helps give me a better perspective. And I know that's one of Mark Zuckerberg's goals, is to create discussion and to build a larger community. It's a place where you might be able to see things that you don't normally see, hear things you don't normally hear without immersing yourself in that culture. All right, so here is my profile, and I'm sharing this just because I'm sharing it as a screenshot just because I can't go online. They restricted the internet, otherwise I'd be doing all of this live. So I'm doing screenshots of all that. So that's my profile. You can tell what's rather important in my life is my kids, my wife, and Cracker Barrel. I like to go there quite a bit. So now, several months back when I was doing a training course on Facebook, I made my profile part of it so that I could be more accessible to the group. Normally I don't really use Facebook for professional purposes, and so I updated everything to be a little bit more professional. I didn't have anything bad on there. In fact, it was more incomplete information than otherwise. But for us who are working in the church, volunteering in the church, putting more contact information, more background information about us helps make us open to those in our community who might want to search us out. So you can see I put in a few things related to my jobs, my college experience, where I'm living, where I've been before. It creates opportunities for discussions for other people to find those connection points. And I know that as I'm meeting new church members, it's always nice to go and kind of see where they're from to see if I can have some kind of topic of shared conversation with them. So one of my first points is to make sure that your profile is complete and in a professional manner. Now, the next step is permissions. This was one thing that was rather interesting for me as I was reviewing my profile to make it more publicly available, is how much I had shared publicly. And you can see up here, it says you are now viewing it as public. By clicking on these three dots here, you can view your profile as any one person, including the public. And I encourage you to do that as well, to see what is your public profile looking at. For people who are not your friends, what can they see? Profile pictures are always public. Your cover photos are always public as well. And when you view your profile as a public, you can see that history of what you have shared over time. And it's kind of interesting to see there was some goofy pictures of us, me and some friends back from high school, that showed up on my public profile because at the time the person who shared it was public. It wasn't anything too concerning for me. I think we were playing volleyball in the backyard somewhere. But it was like, okay, well, I don't need that to be part of my public profile. So you can go through and change your historical things to be no longer public and just viewed by friends only. Or you can untag yourself if there's something you don't want anybody to see related to that. So it's good to go through that. Some of the other information you can see down there in the intro will show up, and you can put what pages you manage. It helps connect you to the church if you're one of the managers of the page, and then you can choose which highlighted images you put in there. So if you're using it personally, I recommend you go through these steps. Yes?
You can do all that just by pull down on the three dots next to it.
Yep, and it'll have a view profile as, and you can view it as a person, like any of your friends, or view it as somebody, just a general public one. So they really have done a good job. That was one of the things that they got hit on pretty hard at the beginning, was their permissions. So there's more that you can do as well, and that's the question, how much personal information is appropriate to share? That's really up to you as an individual, but they give you the tools to set those parameters. So understanding and updating permissions is a key part of that. That was your profile view. In their permissions area, which you would get to up here under settings, you've got a number of different ways to really limit what's going on. Who can see your future posts? You can create groups of people who can see it. You can choose just friends. You could make them public. You can also do this anytime you go and post something, so you can choose what that group is. And I think that's especially important to be considering. If there's something that you want to share for your family or your friends, but you don't want to be publicly available, you can change that. And if there's something you're sharing related to your church, switch it to public. Figure out those things that are fine for an entire audience to view, and pick and choose as you go. It doesn't have to be an all or nothing kind of approach. So one thing that I have also done is, this is where you can review your posts and all your the things you're tagged in is another way to kind of go through it as a list. This next one, here we go, is the tagging. Who can post on your front timeline, who can see others. You can set this here, review posts you're tagged in before the post appears on your timeline. And so I've got that set to on. One time when my little sister decided to post pictures from my childhood, and the dorkiest pictures, and I saw that got shared with all of my friends, I made it a limit here that anybody who tags me in anything, I get to see it first before it gets public. And that's a nice thing, because again, it puts that back into my control on what is shared. And so having this public profile, it's limiting it to what I want to share with people, but that's good. So you've got a lot of tools in here. You can, when you get that, you'll get a notification every time somebody posts something on you. You can see what other people are, review what they see on your timeline. So you've got that ability to go in and look at each of those things. All right, the other thing that you can do is manage your lists of people. And so this was one of those things where, as I made myself more publicly available, I had some people friend me that were related to work. And generally I don't friend people related to work. I use LinkedIn for that. That's a much better approach from a professional network. But I accepted some friends, and what I did is I put them on a list that was not seeing everything. So they were on a restricted list, so that I didn't have to think about it every time. So you can set up those different lists. It's also nice if you're posting something related to college, or you want other alumni to see that, you don't have to share that with all of your friends. What that helps do is cut down on the noise that everybody else sees. And that's a really important part. Don't share too much. And not necessarily because of your saying that I don't want you to open yourself up to too many things, just because if you are one of those constant posters who posts 10 times a day, people are going to start to unfollow you. So I've got a few examples of things. This is the kind of stuff that I like to post that is fun and exciting and interesting, pictures with kids or when I travel, and that's not about it. That's what I post for my friends regularly, pictures of my kids and when I travel. It's a good way to kind of limit it so that I'm not sharing everything, and it keeps you from being annoying to your followers, because you do want to build that community. And if you're one of those constant posters, then then you begin to get shut out, and then your real true messages don't get heard. So the next thing for personal use is to be finding those watering holes, finding those places where people are congregating and talking about their community. So this doesn't show up very well. This is my community. This is Afton in Missouri. When we were talking about new outreach efforts, I attended something that was posted or shared by Send Me St. Louis. They're a group in St. Louis that has a lot of outreach training and tools. And I went to the session on community listening, and one of the first things that they shared was this list of questions about your community. There's probably like 20, 25 questions. And I'd been living in Afton for about 3 years at that point. And as I started going down the list, I realized how little I actually knew about Afton. I was new there. I didn't grow up there, and a lot of the questions about the culture and what things are important in the community, and where do people go to find out new information, I realized that I was blind to all of that. And in today's society, it's not as common to go and hang out with your neighbors and get to know people, at least in the larger communities. I think in smaller communities that might be a little bit more common than, or a little bit more frequent than before, but in larger communities, it's just not the culture anymore. And social media plays a role in that. When you're able to connect with your friends from your past, you don't have as much of a need to build community right in your neighborhood. So I realized how little I knew about Afton, and what I did is I started joining, apparently, sorry about that, for whatever reason, this is not showing up. All right, well, what I was hoping to show, I'm not sure why that is. It was showing over there in my preview. Pardon my technical difficulties. Anyways, I started to join community Facebook groups for Afton, and there's a number of different ones that there are. Some of them are more like community watch groups. The one that I first joined was "You Know You're from Afton If," and it was supposed to be talking about the culture. It ends up being a place for people to ask questions about what was that noise, or did anybody hear this, or what are the ambulances coming down the street for, and that's a lot of it. But I realized just how important those kind of things are in our community, that it is a more quiet community, and as these things happen, people are nervous and worried. That also tells me that they're home a lot, and I see that. And it may just be that subset of people that are on Facebook, but as I've joined multiple groups in my community, I've seen similar trends, and it's been really good for me to stay in touch with it, and I've encouraged others in my church to do that as well, because the people within your church are the best source of community in front of you, but you really want to learn what's important to the people outside of your church too, who are living just down the street. And so Facebook provides a great opportunity for that. I apologize that that picture isn't showing. So before I go on to pages, any questions about personal use? Again, that's a high-level view. I don't want to get down into the weeds of setting up profiles, but let me ask you this. How many of you are in community groups on Facebook for your neighborhood? Good, quite a large group. Have you found that to be helpful to learn more about what's going on?
Yes.
Excellent. What I have found is, if you haven't joined those, in order to find them, just start typing in either your zip code or your city name and see what's there. A lot of them are private groups, and you can request to join, and that helps a little bit too, because you find out who the leader is, who's accepting you into that group. All right, let's move on to pages next. How many of you have a Facebook page for your church? Good. I think just about everybody here. I figured that would be the case. This is our church's Facebook page, and what's especially nice about it is the About section, because it gives you a place to put your map, so that when people are asking for recommendations, those things start to show up. So anybody know of a good church in my area, that pulls up right away. It's also good to put your hours in there. Now, this kind of operates like a business, where it's what hours is your church office open, but that's helpful, address and all that other stuff. It's good to take a look and see what's currently on there. It's easy to get out of date, or if you just first set it up and don't return to it. So I encourage you to do that. Make sure that you have your church photo and logo on there if you don't already. I'll see many church Facebook pages that have the inside of the church, which brings some more engagement for their cover photo, which brings people into it. But I think the problem with that, or the benefit of putting your church picture on it, is that people recognize it from driving by. And so you can quickly understand which church you're talking about if you've got your church's building outside, and it builds that initial connection for your community members who aren't going inside. The Facebook page is the best opportunity to reach your community, and I would recommend focusing it on the people outside of your church rather than on your members. We'll talk about where you can do that. So church photo and logo, make sure your website and email address are in there. Many churches I have seen are replacing their website with a Facebook page. And my next section is going to talk about why I don't think that's a good idea. And so using your Facebook page as kind of a feeder for your website is key, because that's where you really control that entire environment. But also putting email information on there too. I know that there are many churches who don't like having an email address on on their website for spam purposes, but then it becomes very hard to find a way to contact them unless it's going through a form. And Facebook is a great way to put your email because you aren't going to get that same kind of spam as you will on bot search in the web. So I recommend making sure your church email is on there, and then of course address and phone. I've seen many that forget to put that on there, which just is probably just an oversight, but by putting your address in, you get the maps and the other benefits too. As you're doing post, I recommend you focus on a few kinds of content. Certainly, photos are key. That's if you are doing, well, we'll talk about what to avoid, but text only doesn't work well at all. There's very little engagement on that. So photo is good. Videos are better, and videos are a lot more work. The new edition of live videos has been very beneficial because of a number of things. First off, they're easy to post. You could just go live and start talking, and for me, I like the fact that it's done at that point. Like, I don't have the option to go back and edit, which means that I don't have the option to be a perfectionist. And when you're editing a video, it's really easy to get deeper and deeper and spend more and more time. A live video, and the purpose for doing live videos is to be genuine. It's a great opportunity to show what your church is really like. I'm seeing more and more churches that are streaming their services on Facebook, or at the very least their sermons. I think that's a great use of that. For your community, it is good so that people get an idea of what your church is like. For your members, it's good if they can't make it to service for a Sunday. We have a couple preschoolers at home, as you saw. The only time we usually miss services is when they're sick, and unfortunately that's more often than I'd like. So having that ability to connect, but also shut-ins and older members who can't make it out in bad weather, they're using Facebook as well. Now there's some things with copyrights on music that you'll need to make sure to take care of, but it's a great way of doing it. And I would recommend, even if you don't have a camera set up in your church with great audio, anything is better than nothing. So even a cell phone in the front row showing that works out well. I've seen a number of that where the pastor will set it up for a sermon, hit go live, and then just preach and hit end at the very end of it. And it's not too much work, but it gives that additional content out there. So video is key. I think events are good as well, but I wouldn't overdo that. I would make sure that you're posting any of your community events out there that you want more to come in. If you're having a kickoff day for Sunday school or a church picnic where you invite the community, those things should go out there. I wouldn't put every single little event on there because then it just, again, adds to that noise. What I like about events is that people can mark that they are going, and you get an idea of who is, and it shows up on their friends' timelines as well. And it just builds that awareness. Even if it's not an event that I'm interested in going, I can see that, oh, this church is posting events regularly, and you start to get that awareness. Lastly, blog posts, and this one comes with a little bit of a caveat to it. I think if blog posts are part of your communication strategy, which I think is a very good tool for sharing more longer format content, posting that on your Facebook page is a good way to draw people into it. Now, from an algorithm perspective, the mathematical formula Facebook uses to determine what shows up in your news feed, these things are being downplayed. And so you're not going to get a wide reach if you're linking outside of Facebook. Facebook wants you to stay in Facebook, and so they downplay anything that sends you off their site. But I think as a destination for, and this goes more for your members, as a destination to find out what's going on your blog, having it on your page at least gives them that easy way of going, and then they can share it. And those start to gain more traction on the news feed. So I think that's a good way to use it, especially if your blog posts are focused on content and not news and announcements. If you're sharing helpful information, this is the place where you want to share that. That's how you're going to grow an audience. Avoid these types of posts. Text only, like I said before. Anything with media is far more effective, and Facebook favors that in the algorithm. Text only doesn't go too far. People slide right past it as in the news feed. It's just not engaging, and so I wouldn't waste your time on that at all. Multiple links. if you're doing a post that has multiple things, like maybe you're showing all of the upcoming events in your church, do those as separate posts or separate events. Don't try to put that all in one post. Only one link preview will show, and the others will just get lost in the shuffle. And also, it goes back to sending people off of Facebook, and so if one is bad, multiple are even worse. So don't spend any time on that. Sharing, curating content, I don't think this is a thing to do on your Facebook page. I think that's a great thing to do on your personal page if you find something helpful to share it. But if your church page is curating outside content, again, it's sharing things that are, if you're sharing from websites, it's sharing things that are driving people off of Facebook, so that'll get downplayed. But if you're sharing things that are on Facebook, it just continues to add to the noise. So for your church Facebook page, I would recommend not using it to curate content. For your personal page, that's a great use of that. The last thing, requesting likes. We'll talk about, the next one is the evolution of engagement. Likes used to be kind of the currency within Facebook. If a post got likes, then it would show up more in the news feed. And so people abused that and said, hey, if you like, or if this is interesting to you, like this or share this. And Facebook caught on to that very quickly, and so their new algorithm changes will penalize you if you are asking for engagement, if you're asking for likes. So don't ask for it. Make content and posts that are good enough that people will do that anyways. The evolution of engagement is that it started out as likes and follows, and especially for pages. It was how many people are liking us. I've heard that a lot. There are people are worried that their Facebook page doesn't have enough likes and doesn't have enough followers. That used to be a big part of the algorithm, that the more popular pages got shown more. At this point, it really doesn't matter how many people like or follow your page. That doesn't affect too much on the views. In the last about 2 years or so, the engagement of organic posts, so things that you just post on your page, has dropped to about, or it did drop to about 10% of your followers. And so you were putting all of this effort to grow your followers to get the 10% of them to see it. And that's, in my mind, is not worth the effort. It's if it's a currency, it's pennies compared to everything else. And so likes and follows isn't as important from an organic post engagement. There is the benefit that if you have people who like and follow you can use that in targeting ads. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. So that's the one value I find in that. But from an organic post, those don't matter as much. Then it moved to shares and reactions. As for posts, the posts that were shared more frequently or had reactions, and the reactions other than likes were especially valuable, and those got shared more in the news feed than before. But that has even started to fall lower, as going back to the asking for likes and engagement, as more and more brands and other people started saying, okay, if you like this, put this reaction; if you don't, put this reaction, or using it for voting. That started filling up the feed. So in Facebook's most recent algorithm, they were downplaying even that. Now it has come to the point where comments are most important, but more so than comments, replies to comments. So posts that spark discussion, that spark engagement or interaction of your followers are what's most important. And this makes it really difficult. The question's been asked, well, what kind of posts are those? Well, I don't have the answer. Nobody really has the right answer for that. Controversial posts certainly do, but that's not a direction that I recommend you go in as a church, to post things that are going to cause people to argue back and forth. So it really comes down to what is engaging content. And if you're doing live video, that brings up more engagement, because you can ask those who are watching live to comment, and people who are watching after the fact can comment at those specific times or reply to other comments. That's really the Facebook goal. That's what they're looking for. That's what they're causing to have the best viewing in their algorithm. So it's also the hardest to manipulate, which is why they're doing that, is that you can't do that inorganically. It has to be natural. Your content has to be interesting enough that people will comment and reply. All right, this is what I was talking about. I put the nice fiery background to show the people's reaction to the Facebook apocalypse, or Facebook Armageddon, or Facebook Zero. This came out several weeks ago, and people got really worried about that because they're announcing that they were changing things drastically. Mark Zuckerberg every year has his New Year's resolution, if you will, and last year it was to travel to every state. He's had some interesting ones. This year his resolution was to fix Facebook, which when he said that, I don't think everybody thought Facebook was broken, but what it comes down to is he's wanting to make it better for the users, better for engagement, and less of a marketing platform, which it has become. Marketers tend to ruin everything if there's an audience there, and so he was trying to prevent that. And so these new changes are what we've been talking about, really downplaying these typical ways of getting into people's newsfeed. Now, the other aspect of that, and we'll talk about that shortly, is advertising. These changes to the algorithm are not affecting advertising at this time, is what they're saying. And so ads are still a very big part of their strategy. That's their revenue model. So you can find a whole lot about these changes. We did a live video with Seth Hins from the Michigan District several weeks ago on the CTS page, where I talked to Seth about these changes and how to react. If you're interested, that would be a great thing to watch. It's about 20-30 minutes, and a lot of good ideas, and a lot of question marks still, because it's still so new. All right, before we talk about groups, any questions about pages? Yes?
I had a question about videos, because I was just wondering what the length of a video really should be at. What's the duration you want it to still engage people?
Well, that's really the answer, is how long will they stay engaged? And it depends on the type of video, based on your audience. You know, a church service, typically, if somebody's going to commit to watching it, they're going to watch it to the end, or they're only going to watch a few minutes of it and say, okay, that's nice, and move on. If you are doing something with a Q&A, and it's interesting enough that people are engaging, that tends to draw the viewership out longer, because it continues to be engaging. So it really comes down to make it engaging, and the longer the better. That has more value for the algorithm. Long format posts are good, but it has to have that engagement level. So it all just goes down to the quality.
So like a 2-minute video, would it be as good as a 6 or 7 minute video? Because
Well,
we do like a Thursday Thoughts, the devotional platform on our Facebook page and everything, and it's only basically like a 2.5 minute video,
Yeah.
but we're not really seeing a lot of the engagement that we're hoping for with it.
See, and that's what I would say is how can you grow that engagement if you're doing it at the same time every week that people are tuning in when they're available, and trying out different times is key as well. But if you can get that live engagement, then you could go longer. It also provides you with more things to go back and forth and extend the video.
Well, yeah, we do it live because one of the things we like about live is it puts a notification
Yes.
on people's things.
Exactly.
That's what's great about live.
That is fantastic. You don't get that in any other way, is by getting that little pop-up that says your church is going live. Yeah, and that's what's valuable about it. And again, when Facebook is doing those things, you know that they're valuing that, and they want you to do more of that. So, yeah, I think whatever you can do to draw it out with real engagement, as opposed to just drawing it out to have the longer time frame. A 2-minute engaged video is better than a 6-minute unengaged video. So good question. Other questions about pages? All right, well, let's move on to groups. How many of you have a group for your church? All right, just a few of them. And that's kind of what I expected. Pages are very common, groups not as much. Well, let me talk about the difference between pages and groups, because groups really started out as a key part of Facebook years ago, and pages then kind of took over. Groups is making a comeback, and Zuckerberg has talked about how much he's prioritizing groups. So pages are meant to be very public, and post everything out there for people to see, whereas groups are meant to be more private. And so pages are more about publishing information. Groups are more about interactions. then pages have essentially no organic views now. I forgot to mention that part with the algorithm changes. Whereas over the last few years, you're seeing about 10% of organic views on regular posts. It's going to drop farther and farther down from 10%, down to 0 to 2% is what they're predicting. And so while pages are not going to get a lot of organic views and almost become more of a destination, groups are newsfeed gold. If you join groups, you'll see those things posted all the time. And it goes back up to that point there, is that groups posts are much more about discussions than anything else, and questions and interactions. I don't know why it's not showing this. So the next post that I was going to show is for the Lutheran Communicators Facebook group. I don't know if you're familiar with that. Seth, who I mentioned before, he leads that. And he was just featured in the Lutheran Witness and had a great article. And he got a lot of additional people to join that group. I've been in that group for several years, and that's where I found a number of our blog authors. There's people who are very actively engaged in communications, working at churches who participate in there. And what I love about it is most of the posts are questions like, hey, has anybody tried this? Have you seen that? And they'll get lots of responses, and then there will be replies to the responses. And that's the kind of stuff that is great for the news feed. So the value of using groups is the reach, first of all. You get those organic posts in, so you're not paying anything, and it's being shown in the news feed. You get the privacy aspect of it, so that you can post things that are a little bit more sensitive than what you post on your page. So you could post a prayer request in a group, of course keeping in mind all of the HIPAA rules, but having some kind of prayer request where I would not post that on a page because that's publicly available. But it also gives this sense of community. And this is a place people are already on Facebook on a regular basis, but you can build up these connections. And whereas you might have members who are not actively engaged in person at your church, they'll see these things, and you have a better opportunity of engaging with them on Facebook then, because they're at the same level. They don't feel inadequate compared to the long-term members and all that. It's at an equal playing field.
So how do you,
Yep.
because it's a private group,
Mm-hmm.
and they have to be invited, how do you build that?
So that's where I was going. Don't use it as an outreach tool. Use it as an in-reach tool. And you can build that within your church on a personal basis. Say we're starting up this Facebook group where you can learn about a specific thing, and that's what I would recommend as well, is don't have just the church Facebook group. Make it more topical based and have multiple groups within your church that really focus on key things. And so you might have something for youth group parents or confirmation or VBS, or for each Bible study where they have that group. I don't recommend having just a single group for your entire church to replace your Facebook page, because it starts to get into that very broad array of topics and becomes less relevant to everybody involved. But if you're focusing on specific groups of people, specific topics, that's where it becomes the thing. We'll go check out our Facebook group for the next information. So as an outreach tool, I don't recommend groups at all, because you have to have first that awareness of the group, and Facebook isn't advertising, oh, there's a private group on this page. So there have to be some kind of invitation, or they would have to be searching for it. And by making it very specific on the topic, you'll this is going to sound wrong. You'll keep out those who you don't want in the group. You'll keep out the people who aren't actively engaged in the ministry. So the group should be a reflection of reality, of who, what's going on in your church, and it'll keep that audience to the right audience so that they're seeing the most relevant information. So does that kind of make sense? I know I didn't explain that real well. Yes.
Could they be used as an outreach tool? Because sometimes, group members can invite other people. Is that
It can be. It depends on your topic. Like I would not create a group that you just invite members to then post regular things about your church, because if they're not engaged in your church, they're not going to care about those specific posts, and then it may just become annoying to them. And that's the last thing you want your church to be to your community, is annoying. They'd probably just leave the group at that point. So if you've got something that is relevant to the outside, so if you're a preschool is a great right way of doing that. I bring up preschool a lot because I know many churches have that as the feeder into the church. If you're having a preschool group, there's relevant information, and they may not be members of your church, but that's a good way to draw them into your community. So, yeah.
Privacy settings can be changed, right?
Yep. Yeah, they even have it so that you can ask some like qualifying questions before you join the group. You can make it so that either everybody can join or you have to approve that. I definitely recommend approving it, and you may want to ask a few additional questions too, depending on how sensitive the information is shared. So if you're going to do like a prayer chain group, certainly you're only going to want to invite people that are active members of your church community, as opposed to the community at large. Good. Yes?
Let's say you share with another group. Can they share your information with the other?
The privacy settings really prevent that. If it's a private group, you can't share that post elsewhere because it's not meant for all viewing. If you set the privacy group so that those are public posts, I think you have some more flexibility in that, and I don't recommend going that route if everything is public and you're just trying to get through the algorithm. So yeah, I'd keep the focus of the group on topic and keep the privacy settings so that it's only seen by those group members.
And then the other thing is, since group is a private, how safe is that? How private? Since this is online.
Well, you have to be careful. Nothing is entirely private online. And that's why I say with prayer requests, you can share more prayer requests in groups, but don't share all the details because it is out there publicly. Like, I wouldn't put anything on the prayer requests that you wouldn't put on your bulletin that you'd hand out in worship. So you do have to keep that in mind. But it really goes back more towards relevance than anything else. You want to keep your privacy settings to maintain the relevance of the group and not have it going outside to people who don't care about those things. So, yes?
In terms of administrating
Mm-hmm.
these groups, what's the key recommendation? Like, do you ask to be included in the small groups, or just to make sure that somebody's kind of administrating over the whole thing, or what do you recommend?
It's certainly a case-by-case basis, depending on if you trust them or not. It would be good to set up a policy at your church that all groups that get associated with the church are kind of introduced through the church office. It's really easy to start duplicating groups. If we saw that at our school, and we've kind of reined it in, that certain classrooms were setting up their own groups, and then there was parents groups forming, and we had kind of duplicate ones, and some were more sponsored by the school, and some were not, and then people are like, well, I didn't see that posted in the Facebook group. Well, you're in the wrong Facebook group. So talking to your staff about why you're doing it will keep it being organized, and then from an administration level, deciding, do you trust them enough to allow the leaders of the group without it being on church staff? Recommendation is certainly more on church staff than not, having somebody who is that administrator kind of look over that. But you also do want it to be organic, and if it is a small group, it may not want the whole church office staff to be able to see that. So yeah, I think again it's a case-by-case basis, but the most important thing is the relevant side of that you don't want it to just spiral out of control without the church office knowing anything about it. So good questions. Yes?
Let me take you back to the video session.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of format is Facebook supporting? What kind of video format? And
Well-
what size? Is there a size limit?
I have not seen a size limit. They much prefer you use their live video than anything else, but you can upload to, I think I've only really uploaded MP4s to that. I'm pretty sure other formats are just fine, and if it doesn't, it'll let you know and you can use tools to convert it. But live video, they really prefer, and one thing that's interesting too is they don't like you taking their live video off and moving it to another platform. So sometimes when we do Facebook Live videos, I like to take and put on our YouTube channel as well. But downloading a Facebook Live video, they really throttle the speeds, and a 20-minute video will take me 20 minutes to download because it's coming in, it's like dial-up days, how slow it is. And they're really just throttling it because they don't want to make it easy for you to take it off their platform and share it elsewhere. You can, but so they prefer you just do it, the live videos that way. But if you're doing an edited video, MP4s are probably your way to go, but I think the other ones work as well, like AVI. So
You still can link the Facebook to the YouTube.
You still can do that. It won't gain as much in the algorithm because it's coming from an outside source. But you can do that. Yep. The other thing that's interesting, we're using Livestream Studio for our Facebook Lives, and Livestream Studio is built so that you can stream to multiple sources, except if you're streaming to Facebook, they don't allow you to do that to YouTube as well. So they're really focusing on keeping you on their platform. All right, let's talk about ads. Let me check my time. All right, we're doing all right. How many of you use Facebook ads? All right, just a small handful of that. How many of you are familiar with Facebook ads and what they can do? All right, so this will surprise you. Ads is always a sensitive subject in churches. Paid advertising is not something that most churches have the budget for or the experience to do. And I brought this up in a session yesterday. As much as advertising is a bad word in churches, we've advertised in the yellow pages for years, and we spend money on outside signs. That's paid advertising. It's just paid in a different way. Facebook Ads Manager allows you to do a variety of different things. And we'll kind of go into this in a little bit of detail. The structure is what scares off a lot of people. And so the structure is that you would have campaigns where you are setting some of the high-level goals and the timing. You would have ad sets within that are targeting specific audiences, and you'd have ads below that. And good. So I'll go back to that in a second. This view here is the initial view on setting up an ad, and it's rather complicated and can be a little scary the first time, and I've heard many people say, I tried setting up an ad, but I just couldn't figure it out, and so I left it behind. I understand that. I don't think it's a great experience for the novice users who haven't spent much time in that before. But I'm going to walk you through that a little bit and talk to you the value of each of these. So in campaigns, that is stating the overall goals of what you're trying to accomplish. And you can see here they give you 3 different categories: awareness, consideration, and conversion. The awareness part is all about getting the reach out. The consideration is specific actions that you want people to take that are kind of lower level actions. And then the conversions are, for many companies it's sales, like converting to buying a product, or conversions like that are completions on your website. But I think the ones that you'll want to focus on are ads for brand awareness, getting the name of your church out or the name of an event out. It's not so much about clicking, it's just getting eyes onto that ad. And so you can make it not seem so much of an ad. It could just be one of your posts. I'll caution you though, it's really easy to boost a post in Facebook, and it's really ineffective. Or you'll waste a lot of money doing a boosted post. It's much better to go through this process of creating an awareness ad, because the boosting the post just gets you a lot of views, but they may not be the right views. So brand awareness is a key type of campaign. Traffic, if you're wanting to draw people into a specific site, I'd recommend not doing ad campaigns to just get people to come to the home page of your site, because unless you have a really good home page that is optimized for getting people to take that next step, it's not specific enough to be relevant for most people. So if you're trying to draw in a crowd for VBS, having an awareness ad that VBS is coming up on these dates, or a traffic ad that drives them to your registration page that provides all the details, would be a better approach, because it's very specific and relevant. Video views, this is one where you're kind of leveraging 2 of the things that Facebook likes most: videos and ads. And so if you've got a well-edited video that you really want to share, put in some ad dollars behind it will get it out to a larger audience. And a lot of times the expense of creating a video is so much, putting some ad dollars behind it to get a farther reach is certainly worth it. It makes your initial investment go farther. And then lastly, the conversions. So there's conversion things that you can do, such as tracking how many people register for VBS. So rather than making the goal of your campaign that they get to that registration page, making the goal of your campaign that they go through the form into the thank you page, Facebook will optimize your ads to go to the audiences that are most likely to convert, and that's going to be based on who is already converted. So those are just a selection of the the types of ads you've got here. You can see others like app installs, lead generation. Lead generation is one of their newer types where you'll actually have a form within Facebook that people will fill out. If you want to be really adventuresome and write like an ebook or something and have people download that, you could do it that way and get those the leads, the contact information for people. That probably is not what I would suggest for your first Facebook ad campaign. It's a little bit farther down. All right, so we'll get back through here. All right, after you get into as you get into the campaign, you'll get down into ad sets. Now, within the campaign, so let's use VBS as the example. Let's say you're trying to get registration for VBS. You can have multiple ad sets within the campaign, and the ad sets are where you would place your audience, who your targeted audience is. And this is really the value of Facebook ads, is that because we share so much online, or so much on Facebook, they have a database of information about people that you can use to show ads to. Now, they don't give you the names of these people, but their targeting allows you to get really specific on who you want to see these ads. So I pulled up this example here. There's plenty more, but residential profiles, likely to move or new movers, recent home buyers. So you could find people who recently moved into your area and then add some other specific things on it too. So if you wanted to find people who are new to your zip code, who are females in the ages of 30 to 40 with kids, you could target that for your VBS or for your preschool. You could have different ads for the moms versus the dads. Have one targeting females, one targeting males, and have a very different message to it. So you can get very specific. The great thing about Facebook ads and most of the pay-per-click advertising is that you're only paying for those results. Now you can set it, especially for like brand awareness, you could set it for reach, the number of views more than the actual clicks. But it's really powerful. And again, it gets a little overwhelming as you go through it, but finding out these what you can do will start to open up ideas and creativity for what you could be doing. So there's other things you could do like lookalike audiences, and this goes back to the followers. So if you have a good set of followers for your page, most likely they're your members, you could create lookalike audiences for your members and target it for your local zip codes and say, okay, show me people who are already like my members, maybe friends of my members who are in the area, and just have it for that group. So you can have as many ad sets as you need, and then here we go. Target based on location, age, gender, language, demographics, interest, or their behaviors. And that's just to name a few. So you can do any combination of those and get really specific. Then the ads manager, they have the types of ads, and I didn't fit all of them on here because some of it is tied to placement, but these are the types. Actually, placement is next, good. You've got the carousel ad, and it's funny how they prioritize these in the view, what they order. A good thing to watch for is what Facebook makes important, because that's what they're going to give the most benefit to. So carousel ads, where you have multiple images that you scroll through, single image, single video slideshow, which is similar to carousel, and that you upload multiple images, but it shows it as a video more than a scroll through. You've got collection. This is really good for products, so probably not as well for churches, where you could have either a video or image and say what's featured in that. And then the full screen experience, which they rolled out a while back, and it's really cool, but it's a lot of work, where you set up this canvas of things. And I've seen movie trailers do a really good job of it, where they'll be advertising a movie and you click on this ad and it takes over your screen and you can scroll through and click on different videos or see images. It's a great experience, quite a bit of work to set up, and has not proven to be as effective just because it requires more of a commitment and time for the viewer to actually click and scroll through it. So it's fun to play around with. You'd have to have some good engaging content, but I think if you've got somebody who is good at design at your church who wants to take a stab at it, I'd highly recommend it. We did one for our new Reformation book that came out last year, and that did pretty well for us. It was a great experience. The other thing, though, is the placement of these ads, and that it's far more than just the Facebook news feed. So certainly Facebook is a key part of that on both the desktop and mobile, but now you can place things on Instagram, and so another type of ad that you could have would be an Instagram story. It's more of a full screen experience, but without the detailed work of a canvas. Messenger, you'll see those in there, and we'll talk about Messenger a little bit. But then these last two, the workplace probably isn't as important. The audience network, this goes far outside of Facebook, and so websites and news sites could be displaying Facebook ads kind of in line. Google has done this for years. That's how Google has become as profitable as they are, by selling ads far outside just their search. Facebook has taken advantage of that, but you get those targeting too. So you're targeting that specific audience when they're on other pages. So it kind of gives you the both and it's real valuable. Workplace is their kind of competitor to Slack, those kind of things. It's like Facebook for work. I wouldn't recommend worrying too much about that, just because it's not as popular as some of these other ones. Your dollars are better spent elsewhere, and especially depending on who your target audience is. Yes?
You were saying that to pick what Facebook is favoring is the best way to do it. On the page back there,
Yeah.
the first one is carousel, which would be who think is the most important, but then there's new on collection. So how do you know what
Sure.
Facebook is favoring?
Well, it's usually things like that, where they put it in line or if they call it out. But you have to also think of what, you don't want to use it poorly. So I wouldn't create a carousel just to create a carousel unless you have a good one, because it ultimately comes down to who is viewing this. And so if it's not an intriguing carousel, you're still not going to get the results. But what they have found is that those are more engaging for their users when they're done well, and so they'll prioritize that. The collection one, for marketers like me who have individual products that you'd buy, that creates a really great experience. You do a 30-second video of somebody using multiple products and you link to that. Like we've done that with music pieces before, or books. Here's our latest titles, and you can link to that. That's beneficial for marketers, probably not as much in the church. So, but yeah, and that's just, it's probably more important than anything to have the better experience for the end viewer than leveraging what Facebook likes. Yeah, yep. But if you're going to focus energy, I try to leverage both of those things, good content and what Facebook favors. All right, so for your first campaign, this is, I think, the most important step, is having a first campaign. Getting in there, playing around with it, investing $50 and saying, all right, we're going to try this out, and your first one probably won't work as well because you'll be learning, and that's okay. And you can limit how much you're going to spend, and do it for a few days. Leave it for more than 24 hours. It's very tempting after 24 hours when you see not enough clicks coming through to just pull the plug on it. But dedicate some of your dollars and your time for learning, because that's going to only help you grow from there. So having that experience of creating a campaign, choosing your ad sets, determining your audiences. The one thing I forgot to mention with audiences is that you can also target specific emails. And so if you have some kind of registration like I'm doing, I'm not going to target you guys with Facebook ads for this, but if you're doing a sign up at like a cookout or something for your community and just say sign up to learn more about us, you could use that to provide ads for that audience that are relevant. And it always goes back to what's relevant. You don't want to do ads that are just come to worship, because I don't think that's going to be as much effective. If they know your church is there, talk about how you can, what you can do to help them, and through that share the gospel. So, like I said, your first campaign, the first step is just getting started. All right. Any questions about ads before I go too far? Yes.
I was just going to mention one thing that is successful for us is one demographic is friends of friends.
Yeah.
So in other words, if you have a group, like let's say you have 100 or 200 people that are your friends of, or that like that your page, then when you go in and you do the ad, then friends of friends, because relationships are important.
Yes.
Like we'll go in, and if we see now we actually do a lot of news for time. He said not to do, but it but for $5 we'll post something that seems to be getting a lot of attention, and we'll post or we'll boost it for a week, and then it'll get like 100 likes, and then we go in and look, and maybe like 20 of those likes are people that don't already like our page.
And then
So we'll just go invite them to like the page.
Yep, and that's a good way of doing that too. The one thing you have to be careful with boosting your posts is it may be boosting it for friends of friends who are in other states, and like that you really get much better target audience when you set up the ad. But I understand how easy it is. Just click boost post, $5, go, and you'll definitely get that reaction to that. So yeah, that's good. The invitation to like your page is a great way of kind of making that initial connection and knowing that they've already had some interest. You're not completely new to them. They've liked that post. So that's a great suggestion. Good. Any other questions about ads? All right, well, let's move on to Messenger. And again, going back to what I said before, what Facebook makes important, we should be very much aware of and looking for opportunities there. Messenger is a big part of Facebook's strategy. And I would say at this point, don't worry so much about it from a church perspective as from an individual perspective, that you're understanding that and using that more, becoming more comfortable with it, because they're going to continue to grow where they use it. One thing that Zuckerberg did say is that he's wanting to clean it up somewhere. Actually, I think that was one of his directors who oversees Messenger, that it's gotten too crowded and he's going to clean it up. But just a few screenshots. Look at these worked. I don't know why the other ones didn't work. So Messenger started out really as just an instant message service, and they've added it, to suggest gifts to include in it, and it's becoming much more interactive. And it's a great thing. It's that part of it is to replace texting. But they're also moving towards more and more video calling, and with that, so you become more dependent on that for your communication. And it's a great video tool. Like when I think about how much easier it is with Facebook Messenger than with something like Skype, that's an easy way to just jump on and do it. But then they're building out more to this, so like you can pay with Messenger, and using it as as your wallet instead of just your text messaging service. And then they suggest using this as a way to connect with people. So I talked about before how LinkedIn from a professional network is a good way to build those initial connections. Facebook Messenger is kind of a lower key version of connecting with people you don't know. So whereas I might not friend you on Facebook, I might connect with you on Messenger and find you based on your profile. So like a first-time visitor, rather than saying, hey, be my friend and start seeing my posts, you say, connect on Messenger. Thank you for visiting our church today. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. I think that's a great tool to use, but do it as yourself. Don't. It's not as the church. It becomes much more personal that way. And so I've talked to others like Matt Peoples, who was at the Point in Knoxville. He talked about that. That shared that idea with me first. That's how he reaches out to first-time guests, is just a quick message on Messenger, and how effective that is for him. Because it's I wouldn't recommend using LinkedIn for new people because it's more professional, but I also wouldn't go the full extreme of Facebook or Instagram to follow, because that's implying a relationship that's not there yet. Messenger is a happy medium. So Messenger is all about interactions, having those conversations. It's about connections, opening up the door for future conversations and having a way to interact later on. And then moving into bots. That's the thing where I think it's really intriguing to see where this is going. I wouldn't recommend investing too much time and energy right now, but they really want it to be a source of almost replacing search, where if you have a question about something, you go and communicate with the bot. Now, you can manage that yourself, communicate for somebody to communicate with your church on Messenger and ask, when are your service times, but building up the automation of that and automatically answering those questions is an intriguing possibility. All right, so in summary, Facebook is a great thing for personal use. If you are not using it, it allows you to get a better understanding of your community, start to build out those connections. Having pages is a great way to publish information and have a central source for your church. Groups is a great place for in-reach, not so much for outreach. Ads are a fantastic way to target specific audiences with messages about your church. And Messenger is a great way to build initial connections and to keep an eye on that to see where that's going, because I think, it may be next year that we're having a whole session on what Facebook Messenger is for churches. I think it's going to continue to grow. So if you like information like this and you want to learn more, we've got our blog where we post weekly different ideas on how to leverage technology in your ministry. And we have a variety of different authors who are in the church setting. We've got Daniel Ross, who's a pastor. He writes for us monthly. We got Katie Munson. She wrote this one. She's a DC in Rockford. She's got a lot of great ideas on communication. She shared a whole series, or a whole post on Canva and the different uses. So it's just helpful information. And then we're doing weekly live videos on Thursdays related to that post. Sometimes they're a different discussion, but we're trying to make that a very regular thing. So concordiatechnology.org/blog, and I'd also recommend when you're there, if you click on our resource center, it's kind of more aggregated collection of all of the free resources that we've put out before, including some of those videos. So there is my contact information once again. You can connect with me on LinkedIn or look me up on Facebook. But thank you very much for coming today, and I'm happy to take any questions that you might have. Yes?
We talked about privacy on your personal page,
Mm-hmm.
or on your personal profile. On your page for your church, do you recommend having privacy on things that like you post stuff to your page?
I would start off without it and only adjust it if it becomes a problem, because I think there's benefits for doing that, but that usually there's some bad eggs that might abuse it. And so if you have to limit it, certainly limit it when you need to, but I think wait to see if it's a problem. And I know that's a little bit risky, but depending on your setting, a larger church is going to have more of an opportunity for bad eggs posting negative stuff on there. I'll see some of that come across in some of the church communication groups. I have a former member who's angry, goes and posts. It gives you an opportunity to engage in dialogue with those angry posts, so it's not always a bad thing to provide a welcoming response and sometimes asking for forgiveness or asking for another chance, but you just have to be careful. So I don't think it's common to have a lot of negative posts on there, and so I don't know if it's an issue you have to worry about.
Yeah, it's not something we've had a lot of. I worked for a nonprofit, but this last, I think 2 weeks ago, we had a random individual that's not Christian randomly post something, and so I deleted it quickly, but then I'm wondering if that's going to happen more and more, or we should watch that.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely should watch for it, but I would just, kind of monitor that. It limits some opportunities for outreach. So if you turn your permissions off right away and there's somebody who's legitimately interested in your church and wants to learn more, it doesn't give them that opportunity. There's other ways they can connect on Messenger, send you a private message. Some people aren't as comfortable doing that, and so it's one of those things where you wish it wasn't an issue because there's benefit in keeping it public, but if it becomes that much of an issue, you at least have a way to stop it. But I wouldn't start out with that if you don't have to. So yes.
Our church Facebook page is public, but only administrators can post anything. But we've had where I've posted something about an event coming up, or like Right to Life Sunday or something like that, and then it's been shared by something, I think it was called Singers and Songwriters, and they share ours, but ahead of that they post something about like anti-gun or something like real negative, but there's no way to stop that.
There's not really a way to stop that, and I wouldn't worry too much about that. Your audience won't really see it. Those things, that's that's a risk you take of having your church associated with that, but I think most people logically see, okay, this is their message, not the church. The one thing that you'll see sometimes is comments on those posts about that. We'll get some really weird comments sometimes, and then that's on our post itself. It's true that the comment is from somebody else, but what you can also do is just hide that comment, and only they and their friends can see it, not everybody else. And we'll do that a lot, so they don't see that you've hidden it. Nobody that they know will tell them you've hidden it, but you at least get to remove that. But the sharing is a little bit difficult, although that'll show up more for their followers, not for yours. So it's kind of irritating when you get that, though. It's like, why do you have to be like that? But good. Yes.
For the ads, is there an initial fee that you have to pay to set it up, or is it like the ad for the boost?
You don't have to pay to set it up. You do have to put a credit card number in there for it. And then there's a minimum of, I think, $5 a day budget that you would have to have. The Facebook will try to spend your budget, but based on your criteria. So.
Set how many days you want to run it?
Absolutely, yep. And you can turn it off at any time. One thing I didn't mention with ads to be careful of, if you, they have a number of rules for what you can put on your ads. So images with lots of text get disapproved. I think maybe it's like 20% of the space is the maximum for text. They really want it to be in the messaging. And so, yeah, they have some of those requirements, but they're not financial requirements other than the $5 a day. So, yeah, it's the boosting. Because you don't limit the audience there, it's really easy for them to spend your entire budget, and that's why I recommend against boosting. Your ideal thing is to come just below your budget every day, which means you're getting the maximum engagement without reaching the very top.
So talk about boost.
So boosting is when you have a post on a page, there's a little button there that says boost it, and it'll take you to their transaction window where you can set your budget, and it gets you a much broader reach. Lots of people will see it, and so you'll get that extra engagement. Like you're saying, I'm sure you'll get lots of likes and other things. They're going to target people who will like it the best. It just may not be exactly who you want targeted. So you'll get a good awareness from that. It's just you won't be able to really narrow your audience down. Yeah, exactly. But it's also so much easier to do that than setting up an ad and going through the steps of creating the campaign and the ad sets. It can take some time. And so to just at least get out there, boosting can be good. I just don't think it's as effective as what you want. So, good. What other questions? Yes?
Sorry.
That's
So
okay.
the ads go to the target that you set, and then you set a budget for that as well.
Yep,
And
exactly.
it's not necessarily a boost, it's just the ad.
Exactly. So, or the ad set is what you're paying for, and then you can have different types of ads in that. So, yeah, they make it really.
It's a daily with the ads as well. Okay.
Yeah, the ads and ad sets are combined. The budget goes at the ad set level, and then you can have multiple ads underneath that. And so those would get shown in the variety of ways until you reach the budget. So yeah, it can be a little challenging conceptually, but once you get in there, it starts to make some more sense. I don't think their interface leaves a lot to help you with it. And so, like, walking through it several times is what it'll take to really get a good understanding. Right? Well, thank you very much for joining. If you haven't signed up yet or signed in, you can sign up, and I'll send you the link to the slide deck. And I was looking over there. I don't know if our recording worked out real well, but I'll still send out the slide deck. And at least I think my audio recording worked. So thank you again.